Welcome to the All Outdoors Photography Podcast with your hosts Henry Doyle and Ryan Taylor, where we discuss all things related to outdoor and nature photography. On today's episode, Henry and I discuss our photography confessions, guilty pleasures, and the like. Hope you enjoy the episode.
So welcome back to the podcast, guys. This is episode 11. So basically we're going to be talking about photography confessions. So that's like just kind of bad habits you get into as you do your photography, something you do over and over again, and it's just not productive at all.
Yeah, it can be good or bad, I think. But like Henry said, I think it's just like habits that maybe just can't quite shake. But this podcast really is about, hopefully opening that up, that idea of like, you may realize different habits you have with photography. And that could just be anything from photo editing to your compositional style to just pretty much anything you would ever have. So.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get into my first one here, and that is unnecessary use of tripod. So, like when I'm doing my landscape photography, I feel like I'm on a tripod literally 100% of the time, which I really need to change because the percentage of times I'm doing a long exposure, which is like the only thing that requires a tripod, is like I'd say 5%.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have this problem too? Like, I feel like
well, I mean, I'm pretty much the same way. I use a tripod for pretty much 90% of my photography, and especially landscapes. Well, yeah, I mean, like what you said, Henry, it's like long exposures, definitely. That's just like a no-brainer. You could try, I think early on we all kind of try to, slow that shutter and handhold it, but obviously it doesn't work at all. But I feel like just as a counterpoint, using a tripod, helps slow down your composition. Or at least kind of like your thought process. Because if I'm hand holding, I have to keep which I have like really shaky hands as it is, but I have to keep it steady against probably with the viewfinder up towards my face and my eye or whatever. But like, yeah, just the tripod helps me just slow down, think more through the process. I can kind of meticulously position it however I want. Like my Gitzo tripod doesn't have a center column, so I can, have it low. I can do different perspectives, but I understand what you're saying. Like sometimes it could be like a creative crutch almost, because I do admit that there's some times where I'm like, man, I really just need to like go out to a place and just shoot handheld and be okay with that.
Yeah, I see what you mean. What really made me realize this was I went on a hike last week, and for some reason I decided not to bring my tripod. I don't know. There was something about it that just felt so liberating. Like I could just like climb things and like get different angles. Like I just had my camera on a camera strap. I was just getting some abstracts of little fall leaves and just I don't know. There was something about it. Like I didn't have to worry about adjusting the legs, adjusting the ball head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't know.
that just becomes another thing you have to do, and like I get what you're saying, because yeah, I definitely agree. Like if there's a sunset and it's fast approaching and you're just a little late to the location, or it's like just a last minute kind of afterthought, sometimes that tripod does get in the way, and the ball head, like you said, or whatever tripod head you have on you. But like sometimes you just want to shoot handheld, and I do agree that it's like when I've recorded a few videos just shooting handheld, or like using a strap, like you said, Henry, is that it does feel kind of freeing because you feel more kind of mobile and you don't really feel like you're tethered down to some spot. I will say though, because early on a lot of people think tripods are a hindrance due to their weight, but like I definitely feel like for me personally, it's essential to like what I do when I go out in the field.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Like I'm gonna still carry a tripod on every trip, but I think I'm going to just try to have like usually what I'll do before I kind of had this realization, I would just have my camera in my backpack at all times, my tripod, hooked back there. And when I saw a scene, I would kind of take my time, take out the gear, set everything up on the tripod. So now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to have my camera around my neck all the time on the strap, and then have the tripod in case I see something that requires it. But I think it'll just be nice to always have that, ability to just take a snapshot if you want, and maybe it'll be good, maybe it won't, but I don't know. Just kind of
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
thing.
Definitely. It's good to be, I think, like with outdoor photography, like we do, is that it's good to be versatile in how you approach your, photo taking. Not every, like you said, not every shot requires a tripod. Like obviously, I'd say more than half, pretty much almost all my Honestly, all my wildlife shots, I don't really shoot with a tripod. I can't remember the last time I did, just because in that instance, the tripod does become a hindrance. Because, like if I'm shooting a bird or a mammal, usually they're on the fast, the movements are really fast and rapid, and I can't have this tripod slow me down. Um,
Yes,
I,
exactly.
I will say though, monopods. Monopods are definitely a kind of middle ground option if you want that mobility and the stability. So maybe that's something that the budding photographer could you know obtain and use.
Yeah, definitely. I've actually never looked into a monopod. I should maybe think about that.
Yeah,
Um, I'm lucky with my yeah.
go ahead.
I'm lucky with my bird lens. It's pretty light, so I don't even know if I really need one. But do, do you ever do some landscape with a monopod? Like, can you get? I bet you could get slightly longer shutter speeds, right?
I've never actually thought about that. I really can't imagine
I
using
mean, I
a
like nothing.
monopod.
I don't imagine like a second long exposure, but maybe slightly longer.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, definitely. I get what you're saying. It's a good question. I never actually thought about using a monopod for anything other than like something
Yeah.
like sports. I mean, or
Mhm.
wildlife. Like I just can't
Yeah.
imagine.
That's another reason why I need to get one. I was just shooting a football game on Friday, and man, what my arms tired by the end. Ugh.
Yeah, I can imagine. Normally with my wildlife shots, what I do is I usually don't even carry a backpack most of the time because that slows me down too. Like I
Yeah.
said, just because wildlife is very fast moving, or just you need to be really quick on your feet. And so yeah, I usually don't even carry a backpack. I just have this. I think it's a Black Rapid double like chest strap harness. So you can actually attach theoretically two camera bodies to it. Obviously, I don't really need that that kind of feature, I guess. So I just use a single
Mhm.
camera body which slings right over my side with my big telephoto lens and the camera, obviously, and then binoculars. That always helps most of the time with wildlife viewing.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
All right. So.
the next one actually, it's along the same lines. I mean, we kind of already covered it a little bit, but it's shooting handheld. At least for me, can feel lazy and feel overall kind of rushed. Which I know it sounds like a counterpoint a little bit, but what I mean is that sometimes I get too much in the frenzy. Like if I'm visiting a new location, and I will, just kind of stow away the tripod in the car, or I might not even bring it at all. And I get too excited in the moment of just click, 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 which I mean, we're all kind of guilty of it a little bit, but definitely I feel like handheld shooting can be, depending on the
Mhm.
circumstance, be, a valuable resource to you if short on time or whatnot.
I
But
feel like it's a very situational thing.
yeah,
Very
oh
situational.
yeah, all these confessions, they're not like black or white. Like they're all
Yeah.
situational and they only pertain to most of the time
I
specific
mean,
things. But
I would say if you're going on, say, a hike to a waterfall, I would definitely bring that tripod. Even if you don't want to do a long exposure, just you're going there for that subject, so why not make sure you have the most precise composition?
oh yeah.
But maybe if you're just doing a hike and you don't have expectations, why not just shoot handheld?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, like the tripod, like we just said, it can become a hindrance, and sometimes even shooting handheld can open up new perspectives to you. Like if you get down low, get down high. If you do, like I do all my intentional camera movement, my abstract shots, those are all pretty
Mhm.
much done exclusively handheld. And depending on,
Is it weird that I do those on a tripod?
do you really? How do you have like a
Well, I
gimbal
kind
or
of
what?
want. Well, so I just loosen the ball head. I go up and down, so I get nice straight lines.
Oh,
I
wow,
don't know.
that's cool. No, I mean, what
I don't do too much of them though. So.
yeah, that's fair. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of my technique. I guess what I do is I like kind of brace my arms like against my kind of like my ribs and my chest, and I just hold the camera awkwardly, like really up close to my face, and I just kind of like swivel. What do you call it?
Mhm.
Pivot, basically my upper torso, and I'll just mid shutter capture, just kind of go, right along it. But I mean, that's how I do it. I've never actually thought about that. I might want to pick up my gimbal head and try that.
I don't know if you know who Andy Gray is. He's
Yes,
like a
yes.
big yeah. I think he does use a tripod for his stuff, which
A
is
lot of his, yeah.
maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure.
I
Someone
think
does. I
no,
think.
no, no, you're good. Well, he's like the biggest name. One of the biggest names, I
Uh,
think. And I found him from Thomas Heaton because they did a cross promoting thing, and
Yep, same here.
yeah,
Same
you
here.
know, it's crazy how that happens. And Andy's great. He's cool. Great work for him. What was I gonna say? Brain fart. Oh yeah, his techniques. Yeah, I feel like he uses the tripod a lot. But he also, he shows you in the videos. He kind of just shakes the camera and he just kind of throws it around. He's like, he's looking at the video camera and he's just like, look what I'm doing. Just violently flailing the camera. But I think he really shines in his post processing overall because he really puts a lot of attention to detail to that.
Mhm.
But
All
but
right.
anyways, yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of wraps up the handheld discussion here. So kind of the next confession is overpacking.
Yep.
Now, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't say this is a constant struggle for me, but I'd say every time I go on a trip where I'm spending the night somewhere, I literally bring everything, and it really kind of ruins the entire trip for me because I just bring all these chargers, all these accessories, just everything I could possibly need, but 90% of that stuff I just won't use.
Well,
I'm guessing you probably have struggled with that in the past, but
yeah. Well, are you like moving on foot the whole time with all this gear? I guess that's the question. I
well,
guess.
I mean, sometimes I remember I went to New York. It's been about a year now, and I just packed everything into that camera bag. My back was just, in New York, all you do is just walk around all day. We walked probably 12 miles a day.
Oh,
And man, my back was just messed up.
man.
Oh,
Gosh.
because I rented like a 16 to 35 f2.8 for that trip, just for the weekend, and man, that was heavy. And I brought all my other lenses too. Yeah, I had my tripod strapped on too,
Oh my
which
gosh.
which was dumb. If you think about it, who needs a tripod in New York City? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I guess there's uses, but
You'd look so out of place, like if you're shooting street and like
uh,
you had a tripod or monopod with you.
yeah.
Yeah.
The funny part about that trip, I only got like two usable images in my thoughts. So
Huh.
I it was I think it's because I rented really the wrong lens. I don't know, but because it was just I was on my crop sensor back then, so it
Mm.
was a 24-70 equivalent, and that's a great range and all. But in New York, it would have been nice for a little bit more telephoto. But
Yeah.
besides the point, I can overpack a lot.
Yeah, I feel like that's very fair. Like if I mean most of us have vehicles, but like in that case I would just bring more than I think I need. So like if I'm shooting maybe shorebirds or at least scouting or scanning,
Hmm.
lakes for them, I'll bring a separate tripod for that. I'll bring a pan swivel tilt, one of those kind of like movie making ones with the handle on it. And then I'll bring
Hmm.
my spotting scope and I'll just keep that in the car. Or,
Hmm.
I'll just bring extra gear because you never know. Like sometimes I just
Yeah,
kind of
I
switch
mean,
switch up my
I
plans.
totally agree. Like, we both have vehicles. Why not bring all you can in your car as long as you hide it, or as long as you think it's safe enough to where it won't get stolen. Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah,
but
definitely.
I definitely suggest that. But what I'm just mostly referring to is traveling, because that can just go real wrong real fast if
Yeah,
you bring that much gear.
it becomes a problem when you're on foot. I think that's kind of where
Uh,
your choice is kind of going. Is what I'm thinking is that like it's when you're just it's you and your person and you have a bag and it's like do you overpack or do you underpack or
yeah.
somewhere in between, which is really a struggle because I've tried to do the whole pack my life into a bag and go on an 8 mile
Hmm.
hike and that it's doable, but like gosh, I'll be miserable the whole time. And by the end, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my back. You can just feel it in like your
Uh,
shoulder blades, and it's terrible.
And yeah, you feel great on the beginning, but once you get just far enough to where it's
It
too
qu-
far to turn back, it starts to
it
hurt.
quickly changes. Your mood just
Yeah.
tanks. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I've been there so many times. I feel like it's also worth mentioning. It's like to pack smart for the location. Like if it's someplace you've been to before and you're familiar with, and let's say it's a 1 mile boardwalk. Well, in that case, I probably would just bring my whole bag. It's not going to be too much of a hindrance to me. But if it's like a big metro park that has like 16 miles of trail total, and I'm going to be out for like a whole afternoon, evening, I might just sacrifice a few things just so I can spare my back the struggle of just
Yeah.
carrying up, and especially if it's the terrain, which is also very important. Like if it's really hilly, then of course you want to consider that and your own personal, like physical adeptness, I guess. Some people just can't hack it; they can't have all that gear go up hills both
Mhm.
ways, and yeah, so it's all these things are important to
Mhm.
consider, I think, for outdoor photography and hiking in
I
general.
mean, yeah. I mean, think about it. We both started photography fairly young. Imagine if we do this our entire lives, what our backs are going to be like when we're elderly.
Very strong.
Like, you got to consider that. Well, very strong, but also maybe have you could we could have some major issues. You never know with that.
Yeah.
Because I know like soldiers and stuff that carry those horribly large packs around have
Oh, those
major back issues.
rucksacks,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Uh huh.
ugh. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, I mean that's kind of why I'm glad we started young, so we know the
Yeah.
struggles now.
Uh
Start
huh.
later because most outdoor photographers, not to generalize, but they're mostly older.
Very old.
Yeah,
Yeah.
particularly like the retired crowd, because it seems to
Uh huh.
be something of a hobby and interest for most retired people. But nothing wrong with that, of course. But
And they're just as good. Like they
yeah, yeah, it's
there's
just
some of the best photographers are really really old. So
yeah, and it's doesn't matter where you start, honestly. So
and a lot of them are like new, just as new as us. Even like they just
oh yeah, a
they
couple years in, honestly.
yeah.
All right.
All right.
So the next one is such an ongoing struggle for me, but I'll just simply say I love boring flat light, and so what I mean is basically a really blank gray sky day. I don't mean like clouds. I don't mean like depth in the sky. I just mean like I love just a nice what we quote unquote call a boring day of just gray, like I mean a sheet of gray and nothing else.
Yeah.
And because when there's clouds and stuff, the lighting situation becomes unpredictable. Like if the sun peeks out of the clouds, it changes the lighting. You have to adjust your exposures, yada yada. But when it's just a gray sky day, I'm just kind of like it's like a just a big weight off my shoulders. No pun intended, like we
Hmm.
were just talking about. But just a big sigh of relief that I can just photograph freely, take as much time as I need to, pretty much spend the whole day out if I need to or want to, and the lighting's gonna be consistent. So it's just something I'm really, I guess, guilty of sometimes is not choosing the more dynamic lighting because depending on the images, like if it's a landscape, I probably won't do it in this boring flat light. But if I'm doing like macro on flowers or something, much more tighter and cropped in, then I really prefer this light much more.
You like flat light or dynamic for macro?
Um, I I gravitate towards flat, the flat kind of just blank lighting.
Really?
Yeah, but it's just more of like what I'm used to shooting in, I guess, a little bit.
Mm.
And plus, it lasts
See,
longer, like I said.
see what I would suggest for macro, and I recently started doing this. I was the same with you, but I really started going out on bright sunny days for kind of flower shots. So I look for like the dots of light, and if there's light perfectly hitting a flower, you can kind of separate it from the background.
Yeah, I've done a lot of that. Like, I've
Mm.
gone to like botanical gardens in my area, and I'd go out on a blue sky day, midday even. It's even kind of how I got my start with doing this macro flower shots. And there would be just a lot of dramatic, high contrast, just typical high contrast, deep shadows. Like if there's a nice big flower, and it would just have an encroaching shadow, kind of wrapped around it. And I personally don't like that look. I don't know. That's just me though.
Yeah. But I definitely see what you mean on that neutral light. Like there would be periods of time where I wouldn't go outside for photography for like 2 weeks because no, I have to wait for that cloudy, flat sky. When I'm sure there were plenty of good shots I could have gotten in that nice dynamic light.
Yeah, I think it's the worst when I get like one day off a week, like just a whole day set aside, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, I have all the time in the world to do whatever I want, and it's the sunniest day of the week. That actually happened recently when I was photographing the covered bridges. All the days in between were super super, like I was saying, boring, flat light, cloudy days, nothing going on in the sky. Then the one day I go out, it's just pure, just deep blue and cumulus cloud.
Bright highlights. Yeah.
Yes, yes. The morning light was a little more pleasant, but even then, it like by 9 o'clock, even 8:30, it was just already too high contrast and dramatic for what I was going for. Which
Yeah.
kind
I
it kind of sucks, but it's
yeah.
like it is what it is.
I did a portrait shoot today for a client. And it I picked today specifically because it was supposed to be cloudy, but it got sunny really fast. And there were some bright highlights, but I was actually pretty pleased. If you're intentional about it and you place your subject well, obviously, if it's nature, you can't necessarily place your subject, but if you find subjects in a bright highlight area, if it's large enough, it'll still look good. You just got to avoid that combination of highlight and shadow. That's where you can really get tripped up.
Yeah, yeah, very, very fair. It's
Mhm.
just like I said, it's more of just a preference. It's not something that's a be all end all, but it's something that I just
Yep.
find myself, for whatever reason, more gravitated towards overall.
And if you're shooting waterfalls, I would say 100% consider going on a neutral day.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've tried
you
that.
don't.
I've tried that many times, and like we were just saying, it just is too high contrast, and it doesn't really work out as well.
Yeah, it's definitely complicated, and you got to remember that your eyes are different than what your camera sees in
Mhm.
the end of everything.
Yeah, it sees things much differently than we do, of course.
Hmm. All right. So the next one is unnecessary ND filter use. So for a long time, I got my ND filter, my first filter in Christmas last year. It was a six stop. I still have it. It's really good. But I would have it on my camera all the time, even if there wasn't a long exposure, just for every landscape shot I took. Of course, I took it out for wildlife. I was smart enough to do that,
I was
but
just gonna say.
not for the landscapes. So even if I was in a forest, which is a low light situation, I would still have my ND filter on. And
Uh,
because I don't know, I was taught somehow that the longer the exposure, like the sharper the image would be, and that's just not true.
it's quite the opposite.
Yeah. Um, so that is a problem I struggled with a while ago, and I'm still struggling with the extent. Um, yeah, so
I got
that's kind of a shorter point, but you do have to be careful with that.
I gotta ask. So, is this like was it just pure laziness, or just like a lack of insight? Did you not realize it was on there, or did you consciously were you aware that it was on there, the filter?
Oh, I knew it was on there. Yeah.
What?
But sometimes I would get so into it that I just leave it on for like days on ends because
Okay,
yeah.
that's a new one. I think I don't know. So, I mean, I don't. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Honestly, that's just so because most people are just UV filters or like perfection protection filters, and that's what they use at all times. But like an ND filter, just and a six stop one at that is just uh
Mhm. But I do love that filter. I mean, if there's any kind of water, that's always on there for me
definitely,
personally.
yeah. At
Six
least
stop is like the sweet spot for me. That for waterfalls on a cloudy day, that gives me about a 1 second. I would say for like sunsets and stuff, I would like a slightly longer filter, maybe a 10 stop, so I can do like a 30 second to really blur out the water. But I really like that six stop for kind of giving a good combination of motion and a little bit of blur too.
yeah. I'm just trying to imagine having like shooting landscapes or whatever at all times and having six stops of light just be removed. I just can't imagine that ending well, especially on a windy day.
Yeah, yeah,
Ugh.
yeah. It took me a long time to realize that wind thing.
Yeah, you zoom in real
Just
close on all the
doesn't
leaves.
didn't quite translate for a while.
Yeah, like once again, I guess it depends on what you're focusing on. But
Uh,
yeah, kind of the same thing with you said waterfalls. I find, especially with the much more faster flowing ones, like anything that's rapid, like whitewater, or just a really nice, beautiful, like a really big size waterfall. The ND filters definitely do help, I think, overall with long exposures. The little creeks and everything, I have a lot of those in my area that I've photographed extensively. I really don't find the ND filter helps because the water movements are so subtle as is, no matter where I'm positioned. So I really don't use it for that case.
yeah, but they're definitely great tools, but you got to be careful. They're like sunglasses. Like you got to think about it. Would you wear sunglasses in a dark forest? No. So just don't put sunglasses on your camera in a dark forest.
I
It's
think
that simple.
it's like just remember. It's like all the obvious things, like remember your battery, remember to take off your lens cap, remember your memory card, and then make sure you have the
Mhm.
proper filters you want on your camera
Yes.
and your lens. So
Well, speaking of filters, I know you have another filter you tend to rely on quite a bit.
yes, so polarizer filters. I'm like Henry said with ND filters. I'm kind of the same way with polarizers. I pretty much keep those on at all times. Except for wildlife. Once again, that's kind of like the exception with a lot of these confessions here. But polarizers for me are just I like the nice deep saturation they provide. Like if there's like wet leaves on the ground and I want to twist that filter and it removes all the reflections. If there's water like a waterfall like we are saying, it deepens. It makes the water more shallow. Removes harsh reflections and it saturates all the different colors. If there's like foliage surrounding it. And for the stop or two of light that you lose, I feel like it's really just not big of a consequence for what images I can take. So overall, it's really just filters I keep on at all times. Honestly, videos sometimes I even keep them on for video. I think, but for photographing specifically, I pretty much use them for I'd say about three-quarters of what I've photograph.
Hmm. I mean, those are great filters. You do know though that does block out about 2 to 3 stops of light.
Is it
I
two
don't
to
know if you
three?
know that, but yeah.
I was thinking a stop or two, but I guess
Mhm.
they're all about the same, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, it obviously depends on the strength of the polarizer.
Yeah,
Um,
I use Hoya ones, and if I believe they, at least the specific ones I use, they are a CPL UV, I believe. So it combines the
mhm.
features of a UV one and obviously the contact polarizing of the polarizer filter, essentially. But yeah,
Yeah, that's cool.
they darken. Yeah, they're very nice. I think they're HRT is like the model or series they use, but they're very very good quality. I will recommend if you get filters, don't skimp on those, of course, but
Yeah. So
yeah.
I have the combination Polar Pro ND filter and polarizer. So that's kind of another reason why I always had the ND on is because it had the polarizer, and at the moment I plan to get a dedicated polarizer, but at the time that was the only way I could polarize the scene. So I guess that's kind of another reason I kind of overly relied on that filter.
It's so weird. I think I got the I don't know if you want to call it idea. It was I was reading about Art Wolf.
Yeah,
Yeah, I believe you talked about him a little
he's
bit.
cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's a very good photographer. He's a big reason why I got into this, and I think I read once on probably one of his blog posts or somewhere a video. I can't quite recall, but someone asked about gear he uses, and he said he's like, pretty much I use a polarizer filter at all times. He's like, I keep it on my lenses, and he's like, most people see that as a shock, but I just find it essential. And so, honestly, I just kind of copied him and started doing it, and I was like, you know what? This
why
honestly,
not? Why not?
I mean, I think it's just a nice way to look at images you take. I don't
Mhm.
know. I just
It
find
really is. I agree. I
I,
agree.
I think there's some. It's almost maybe I'm just too tethered to it now. But like if I when I do, if or when I do break the filters, I get so distraught because then like, well, there goes my great wildlife or sorry, excuse me, waterfall images, or the landscapes where I can saturate the colors. And I will not take a shot like that if I don't have a polarizer on, just because I just don't like the
Mhm.
look it provides without it.
Yeah. And most of those effects cannot be replicated in post production.
Yeah,
Of course, you can boost the saturation, but some of that highlight detail that gets removed cannot be done in post production at all. Especially when it comes to water, there's no way you can do anything with that without a polarizer. Like, there's no way you can get rid of that weird glare without
yeah.
that nice polarizer.
Yeah. Definitely a good point is that I feel like that's why I use them so much is that, I know this is going to provide so much more benefits than outweighs the costs, like 2 or 3 stops of light.
Mhm.
And like you said, post
And
processing.
especially if you're doing landscapes and there's not too much wind, you can just turn down that shutter speed a little bit or lengthen that shutter speed a little bit to compensate.
Yeah. And I personally don't use UV filters. At least I haven't in years. And this for me in a way is kind of like acting like a UV filter, as in what I mean is it's
Hmm.
protecting the glass element. So it's a dual purpose, but
Yep.
I pretty much keep them on like I said at all times on pretty much my three main lenses. That's barring my telephoto, but I do actually have a CPL for that telephoto lens, as weird as that sounds, and an ND filter one. So maybe someday, long
Have you
distance.
done a lot with that?
No, I kind of bought them for the novelty and just to say that I have a filter set for all my lenses. That was, all, the same or whatever.
Why
ND,
not? Why not?
UV, CPL. Yeah, I mean, it was affordable. But
Mm,
honestly, I don't see myself using it. I think it's a Bauer set. I think that's the name of the Bower. But I
mm.
imagine one day, maybe if I get like a long distant mountainside, maybe there's fog or something I want to, elongate with
Yeah,
exposure.
if
Maybe I will use
you're
that.
in if you're in Patagonia or something and you need to get a
Yeah,
distant mountain,
you want to get 600 mil, but you want to use an ND and CPL. Well, why not? On a tripod, of
yeah,
course, but we can dream.
yeah.
But anyways, that's pretty much all I had to say about that one.
Yeah, with my 600, I'm lucky I can use the same filters I have already. So
Oh, that's cool.
um,
Yeah, with
I
it.
think I've only taken like one landscape, one or two with that, but I definitely plan to do more.
Is that with like adapters or what?
It's actually 82 millimeters, which is the same size as the filters I have, so it's perfect.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's
Mm.
neat. Unfortunately, all my filter sets for my four lenses. They're all different, so it's just a struggle with
Ah,
Canon EF, but
uh-huh.
it's all good.
All right. So the next one is judging other photographers. So I am a very judgmental person. If I see you, I will most likely make a judgment. It's just kind of a personal thing. I don't know why it's a thing, but it is.
Jeez,
So uh,
did you judge
I'm
me
just maybe.
when you met me? Oh man, I hope it was favorable. Anyways,
So I just like get defensive when I see other photographers. Like I'm always afraid. Like some of this is based though. Like for example, I was shooting a football game on Friday, and there was this professional. I'm shooting for my school yearbook, which is not professional. There's this professional sports photographer with his big Canon white lenses, everything, and he was definitely judging me. He was like looking me up and down, like, "What the hell are you doing here? Get off the field." Um, and I pretty much do the same thing, but I do that when I'm like out in nature and I see maybe a more amateur nature photographer, and I don't want to do this, but it's just kind of my instinct. I need to get better, but I'm just a little bit ruthless when it comes to that.
Sorry, that's so weird. Do you like look down on them? Like I pity thee with my 600 millimeter
No,
Canon.
no, it's just pretty much in my head. Like I
Okay,
just
like the
I
nagging
instantly
voice.
judge them. I'm never mean enough to say anything. I don't know.
I I mean, is it like insecurity you think about your own work or like
Probably,
or just like that fear of
most
judgment?
likely.
Oh, okay. Like you're anxious about
Uh-huh.
them thinking
Yeah.
like especially I guess with gear, it's like, oh, he's not using Gitzo tripods. What's wrong with him?
Uh,
Or
I'm definitely not using Gitzo tripods, but
well, I am, but I don't really look down on anyone who doesn't. I mean, really right stuff makes good, quality products too.
so,
Anyways, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So is it like when you're going out in the field mainly, or is it like you're scrolling through Instagram or something?
I would say mostly Instagram, honestly. No. I'd say like mostly like say I meet a new photographer. Probably the worst thing is judging people on gear, which I shouldn't do because I've been in
Uh-huh.
their place and I'm still in their place. It's not like I have top of the line gear or anything, but I'm
Yeah.
just so into gear that I just like, oh, you're shooting with like a T3i, like come on, the
uh,
18 to 55 or whatever. I don't
yeah,
know.
I guess there comes a certain point where you have to bite your tongue and not, obviously not say anything or anything mean like that. There's a
Yeah,
couple.
I mean, I've never said anything, but it's
It,
something I need to get better at.
sometimes you want to, I bet. Yeah, there's like a few Facebook groups I'm a part of that do like photography in my area and like just bird watching. So, like we said, there might be generally older people, maybe they're just doing like backyard birding, and they get like a really blurry shot, and I'm kind of just like I kind of do the same thing where I'm like thinking in my head, I'm like it's got like 12 likes and everyone's like great shot, and I'm just thinking like oh the lighting's terrible, it's out of focus, I can barely tell it's a bird, but like people like it, so it's cool. I'm not going to judge them for that. Uh, I feel like Instagram too, just really, or just social media in general, really does create that kind of insecurity game and jealousy game where you kind of just want to one up people for no good reason half the time.
Yeah, but I'd say I'm saying getting better every day, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But yeah,
You're scaring me, man. I don't know. I'm trying to. It's just I don't know. It's weird. I mean, there's one good time. I think it was last year. I went to. Have you ever heard of Cedar Bog?
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's up in Urbana, Ohio. And
Yeah.
I went. I think it was summer 2019. I went for the first time. I was really excited because I've just always heard great things about this place. The flora, the fauna. It's a beautiful boardwalk. It's not even that big of a place, but it's just gorgeous. Has endangered species, just everything. And I went, and there's a pretty well-known Ohio photographer and naturalist, Jim McCormack, was actually there I think with his mom, his mother, and he had his big, like you said, big, Canon white lenses. I think he had a
Mhm.
monopod on it, if I recall. But he's just kind of sitting in the shade for it because it's a bright and sunny, like June day, very, very hot and humid. And I just like I've never passed by so many nature photographers in one place. Like there's so many with like these dedicated ring light flashes that like attach to the tip of your lenses. They had like these
Uh,
harness straps that were like like mounted to their chest. It was like the funniest thing. But I like passed by dozens of them at this place, and they're all doing the same thing I'm doing. And they're asking me. It was cool though because I kind of got over that kind of thing of like, oh, their gear's better than mine because they have more money. But like I quickly got over that because I realized that's like we're all sharing the common like passion for
mhm.
what we do. Like, I pass by someone with big old telephoto or whatever, and they'd be like, "What'd you see? Anything good? Any dragonflies, damselflies, birds?
Mhm.
Did you see the orchids? Stuff like that." It's at least for me. I found that you quickly kind of get over that feeling of just unease,
Yeah.
at least out in the field. But on the internet, it's a little different because you can hide behind a phone and just be like, "Oh,
Yeah. See, I think
yeah,
that's part of my problem. Like, I remember, and maybe kind of some of my own photographers that have judged me in the past. Like, I feel like I vaguely remember in the beginner days posting on some forums questions, and then like getting the most rude answers back. Like, there's some
oh."
really weird people on those forums. Like, they get so obsessed about all the details and stuff. So I
It
don't know.
feels like they're not commenting, but they're interrogating you,
Uh-huh.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I could see that.
And like even like recently, I posted a question on B&H Photo. Like, I'm looking at a tripod, and one of the things I look for in a tripod is a removable center, like a removable center column, right?
Mm.
So, I ask, B&H has a nice question and answer section, so I just type in my question. A couple days later, I get, why would you ask this? This is a professional tripod. Of course the center column is removable, you asshat or something. Like he said asshole. Like he literally said asshole. Like
All in
like
caps lock too.
pretty much. And I was like, what the hell? Like get a life. Like I just was asking a question, the center column's removable.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, so like I said, people can hide behind a keyboard or a phone screen, and they just want to rag on you for asking a silly question. I mean, it's not a silly question, but something to them, they're just like, oh, they scoff and think, why would you ask that? I don't.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't know. I don't know. There's this weird thing with that where people just get so insecure about their own work, and I'm like, why can't we all just get along? It's like we're all in this.
Uh-huh.
We're all in this together. We're all doing photographing similar, same things, and it's like, what does it really matter?
Mhm. Okay. Well, I mean, we called it confessions for a reason, so.
It's more like rambling at this point.
Uh-huh.
By the end of it, shoot. Um.
Okay.
Anyways,
So,
on that note, so
Harry is a sociopath.
I know. Yeah. So let me get to something a little more lighthearted and wholesome. I don't know.
I'm gonna
So,
murder Ryan in his sleep. What?
geez. So my post processing workflow, I find is very redundant and samey, like half the time. What I mean is that I feel like editing for me is on the computer is such a chore. Like I sit down with dozens of photos, like written out. I'm like, okay, I have all these image files I have to edit, and it's like image export, computer crashes. I'm like, great, I have to start that edit all over again because I didn't save it or export it or anything. And then I just like end up getting really impatient, and I start just using the same global sliders, the same things to just edit each image. I will literally use like the same 5, 6, 7 different sliders pretty much exclusively for any image, honestly, I take, and I just kind of churn them out.
It's kind of become a formula almost.
Yeah, yeah, it's like an editing style, but it's kind of just become this crutch, and yeah, formulaic. It's just been something that's just kind of I've seen over time. I'm like, well, I need to like mix things up or try a new piece of software. I don't know, where I just kind of feel like it's just become boring. I don't know. But then again, the joy for me is mostly going out anyways with the camera and being like in the moment. I do like editing sometimes, but like I'm never really like sit down at the computer like, yay, I got like 100 images to edit for the past month or two. Like it's never exciting to me necessarily.
Yeah. I would say I struggle with that too to an extent. I don't know about you, but for me, it's like exposure, contrast, saturation, sharpness, and that's pretty much it. I really need to dive a little bit deeper in.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I should mention which ones I use. So I use Skylum Luminar for most of my stuff, and then my HDR I use Skylum Aurora HDR, and both are good pieces of software. I they're kind of they crash a lot though on my computer. I guess my computer's not up to date as it should be with the specs and everything, but they work great when they do work. But I pretty much use the same things, just basic adjustments like any kind of exposure, global sliders for exposure, typical stuff like contrast, maybe add a really slight vignette, sharpening, of course, at the end. Usually that's the last thing. Sometimes denoise, depending on the image, and just other things like clarity. Other than that, it's not too much else. Sometimes I'll throw in a dodge and burn, like if I want to like light up maybe the eye of like a bird or its entire body, or just stuff like that. But yeah, I just kind of I don't know. It just feels too cookie cutter to me, if that makes sense. Where it just kind of feels like I'm just doing the same thing over and over with little to no variation. I even use the same white balance most of the time. I usually set to auto when I shoot in camera, but even after the fact, I just kind of keep all the the tint and temperature the same, and just I don't know.
I don't really do this, but I know people will like buy a preset pack from their favorite photographer, and
Mhm.
they'll just import their photos, put on a preset, and there you go. Or they'll just
No,
export to JPEG right to their phone, put like a sepia filter on it, and there you go. So
I don't want to.
you got to be intentional. Yeah,
Yes,
and it's just like film developing back in the day. It's 50% of the process.
definitely.
Um,
I intention editing with intention. I feel like that's. I think you just hit the nail on the head with that. Like you want to really look at your image in front of you and be like, okay, this is a waterfall image. Maybe I'll use the Orton effect, or I'll just, dial back a little bit of contrast so it's not too extreme or whatever, or desaturate it and convert it to black and white. Like you want to be more intentional. I think the best photographers they get maybe if they're lucky they get one good or great image from each trip, and then they edit that image, and they'll
mhm.
spend a considerable amount of time on it. They'll do 20 to 30 minutes. They'll even make a video about it and share it with you, maybe on YouTube or something, and they'll show you the whole process. And they have like masking and layers, stuff that I'm not too familiar with. So maybe it's just my lack of knowledge is what's holding me back a little bit, where I just don't know what I'm doing. So, overall, so I just kind of like don't find it exciting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like I really envy those photographers that can just spend that much time on an edit. I'm just not patient enough. Like when I take a photo, I just want to get it done. It's just I don't know.
Or even like astrophotography in nighttime. Like, you ever seen them like type out the entire like what do you call it script of what they do and the exposure settings, and it's insane how much details and technical info go into making a shot. And they'll be like, I stacked this 14 times. I used a different varying aperture focus. It's just like a crazy amount. And I'm like, how do you
Mhm.
even? And then they stack them all in conversion or whatever software, and I can't wrap my head around that. I'll do a few brackets of something, but like I don't know. I just don't. I guess the excitement for me comes from going outdoors and just seeing what I see and photographing it accordingly. But I just don't find the excitement in
There's
sitting
some
in front of
people
the
who
computer
even
for hours.
yeah. There's some people who will even focal length blend. So they'll
What?
take a shot of the mountains at 70 millimeters, and then take that same scene at 24 to get a nice large foreground. And they'll combine the two together. It's crazy. I
That's
know
a
Gavin Hardcastle and Adam Gibbs do that.
that's a thing.
Nick Page, yeah, it's crazy,
So they do.
crazy, crazy.
So wait, okay. So they have it. Let's say they have it on a tripod mounted on there. They have it pointed in the same area. All they do is switch lenses, but they shoot two separate shots, right?
Yep.
Do they have the same
So
camera
basically,
settings,
yeah, but when you have like a wide angle lens, it can tend to shrink the thing in the background and
or just
emphasize the thing in the
distort
foreground.
it too, or whatever?
Yeah. So that's how they kind of avoid that.
Hmm.
It's
That
crazy though.
that's
I
so
can
weird.
yeah.
I've never heard of that, honestly. This is news to me. See, we learn things here on the podcast, don't we?
Yeah.
So, what's your last one, Henry? Your last confession?
All right. So my last one is going to great lengths to avoid people.
Me
Uh,
too. Me too. Especially the COVID times, right?
yeah. But even before that, I just don't like people. I don't like talking to them, especially with camera gear. They always ask me questions about it, and I just feel uncomfortable, and I have social anxiety. So like,
Me too.
it's just not something I want to do. And I'm out in nature. I'm enjoying things. I don't need to see another human being. It's not like I'm going to be rude, but if I can just
Yeah,
hide, why not?
I would take the longer trail just so I
Uh,
avoid people.
I will walk through a swamp to avoid people, and I have done that before.
And you know what the best thing about a swamp is? No one else is going to be there probably. So, yeah, gosh, I totally share the same sentiment with you. It's like I'd rather if I had to choose between lots of people and no people, I'd rather just know people. And as a consequence, I usually go out on very boring days, like I said, boring flat light days, rainy days, anything with extreme weather by a normal person's standards. Or I'll just go to a very large place that's very remote, like some of the largest state parks in my area. But I'm the same way. I'll be nice. Like there's some nice, genuinely nice people. I mean, I've never had really a bad experience with people just asking what I'm doing or whatnot. But still, I don't know. It breaks my concentration and focus, and I just really don't want to have that. If I just hear people talking all the time and being loud and stuff, and it just makes me a little anxious, like you said, and then I just don't really produce the same images I want to take.
Yeah, I definitely see that. You just gotta like, even if there are people around, you just gotta kind of ignore them. That's what I just learned to do. Have
It's
you ever had people stare at you before, like for long periods of time while you're
all,
doing photos?
all the time. It's the weirdest when the other day I was out at a just whatever local park. It was early morning ish, but I was kind of romping through like a creek, a really shallow bed creek, with like a cliffside, some old like I believe dolomite. I don't know my geology too well, but old like rock kind of cliff sides. And I was in lower level part. And there's a really shallow creek, and I was just looking at the little cascades around me, and I kind of look up, and there's someone walking the opposite way, just like an older gentleman or whatever. And he's just kind of doing the same thing, just kind of just splash through the creek a little bit, walking the other way. And he started like smiling and kind of look at me. I saw him mouth some words. And I heard him say something, but like there's water next to me flowing, and I'm like, I kind of just awkwardly yelled out, and we were like a big distance away, like 15 feet. And I was just kind of like, what? It was the weirdest encounter. And he's like, and then he got a little closer, I guess. And he's just like, got any good shots? I think that's what he said at least. And I was just like, oh yeah, yeah. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a little over analytical here, but I just kind of like maybe I sounded a little rude
Hey, I mean,
because
well,
if you catch me off guard, I'm going to sound really rude. Like if I'm
you've heard my mugging story. I mean, you have
we
every
all
right
have.
to be suspicious of people.
Yeah, like if I know you're there and I'm consciously aware, like I'll be nice, I'll say hi or something, especially if I'm just walking along the trail or something. But like if I'm like hunkered down on the side with this flower just in my frame and I'm just like really focused on it, and I hear behind me, get any good shots as I walk by, I just like jump. First off, I jump because I freak out because I probably won't know you're there if you're being quiet, especially. But I'll be like, oh yeah, sure. Like I'm working on it. I just kind of come across that kind of like gruff, I guess, sort of way.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, part of me is just
All
like
right.
leave us alone, but but at the same time, I
Yeah.
don't I don't mind them. I've grown to like I don't know about like I've accepted, tolerated seeing people at most places, especially the busier ones. Anyways,
Hmm.
so my last confession here, I guess we kind of touched upon it briefly here, but my compositions can often become stagnant. And I feel like every photographer goes through this rut a little bit here and there, especially if you do this for years on end, like we have. Is that you kind of just you look over your work, your whole body of work, your portfolio, and you start to see similarities. And like I said, this is not really good or bad; it's a neutral confession. Pretty much all these are. But I started noticing, well, these two shots, they're 2 years apart, two different locations, far away from each other. I took them with two different lens choices, but like your eyes like are led into the scene the same way, whether it's like a a mode path on the trail or just whatever. I just find with my compositions sometimes. Like looking back on my work, is that everything just kind of looks samey sometimes, and you can call it stagnant because that sounds a little negative, but like maybe it's like a strong suit. Maybe it's like your style. Maybe it's just something your eyes are just more gravitate and drawn to overall. But what do you think, Henry?
I like. Would you say you are always shooting the same subjects or kind of the same general elements?
Yeah, like if I'm shooting a meadow or a prairie, and like I use the example of it, the 2 years apart, yada yada, they might turn out the same. Or if I'm using like rule of thirds and I offset a tree in an open field, maybe I'll just offset it to the right. And I've taken those examples in particular. I can think of a few shots, and I've taken the same one, same style of shot, and I've done it, like I said, two separate places and all that. And you can call it a coincidence, but like I feel like we were saying, it's like photographing consciously. There's something about that you have to like kind of unpack and think about, like, why do I like this layout, this setup, and why am I so drawn to photographing in this sort of specific way?
Yeah, I see that, but I don't always think that could be a bad thing. I mean, you can get a
Oh yeah,
nice mastery of those compositions and really kind of just
yeah,
just become an expert on that.
yeah. I'm not by all means. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just something. These confessions is like something to just be consciously aware of habits and like what you're thinking, what you're seeing, really becoming evident in your work. Like macro flowers, I pretty much always nowadays take a top down shot of a flower. If it's like a wide bloom, I like to get like the face of it, if that makes sense. So I'll do like a top down shot mounted on a tripod, extension tube, all that stuff, and then I'll crop it to a 1:1
Yeah,
square, and that's become like my signature look, I guess, for flowers. You know, but
make sure you check out his Instagram to see those flowers. They're very
yes,
good.
I thank you. I have plenty of them, and I shot them all in that same way. I do other things. I do break the mold. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, overall, it's like I have this set of like shots I have to get of each thing, if it's a flower, what have you. But certain things I have to look out
Almost like
for.
a almost like a checklist in your head.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just things. It's like shots I have to get, or compositions, or all that stuff.
Hmm.
So yeah, that pretty much wraps up Henry and I's confessions here. I guess if you want to leave a comment on the YouTube channel, or DM us or email us on Instagram, tell us your confessions and maybe like things that habits you've noticed over time that pertain to photography.
Yeah, and I hope you enjoyed this week's show. This is episode 11, like we said. We're surprised we're going this long, but we're just going to keep doing it. We hope you're enjoying.
Do you have
Before
any?
we kind of wrap up the show here, we're we're going to kind of talk about some announcements here. So
So announcements. Yeah, actually, I have a pretty big deal. Just yesterday morning, I finally signed a contract. Woo! Yeah, what I mean is a photo.
yeah,
Yeah, so feels like forever ago. A few episodes back, I basically announced I had this big freelance kind of job, I guess, with the local nonprofit I'm a member of. It's a Wetlands Association. And so after some, just shoot emails back and forth, messaging the executive director, she finally emailed me back, signed the contract that I proposed to them. And so I'm going to begin conducting some field work, doing mainly photographing events that they have with the members and the people that volunteer. Some other just kind of special events, like they have a tree distribution event coming up here soon at a local church, and I'm going to be like photographing them, doing the whole thing. And they also said there's going to be a lot more in the coming months and even year of doing some video work, which would be very exciting. So anyways, there's just a whole lot to it, but I'll just leave it at that. So I guess you could say I'm under contract a little bit here. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I already received my first payment actually for some
Oh
photos.
wow.
Yeah, it's about $200 actually. But for yeah, I'm really humbled that they, I guess, they chose me, I guess, of all people. But I mean, yeah, it's just one of those things. I shot the video, so they kind of saw that and they're like, "That's cool." They should see the photos I take, and I'm like, "Hey, I've been a member for 4 years. I kind of know most of you, and yeah, so I'm really just, like I said, humbled that they would hire me, and so this should be an ongoing thing. I hope. You have any announcements, Henry?
I hope so as well.
Thank you.
Well, I've really started kind of getting some portrait work. I did a portrait shoot today for this family. It's four of them. So that was fun. I also got paid $200, so
Nice.
pretty good payout.
Congrats.
um, yeah. So that was fun. I just went down to a local park, and I'm not really a studio kind of person. I like shooting out in nature, so just got some nice. There was some nice goldenrod flowers. I don't know if you knows what those are, but
Yeah.
some provided some great backgrounds, and it was fun. So I'm probably going to be launching pretty soon. Well, not that soon. I need to figure out stuff, but I'm going to be launching kind of maybe a separate Instagram for portraits.
Ooh.
Because I do have a lot of, I'm almost a senior, and I have a lot of friends next year who want senior pictures, and I just know a lot of people who, would like that kind of stuff. So, but I do still want to separate it from my nature photography, because obviously it's really two different things
Yeah.
for me.
It's
Um,
it's doable, but like it kind of, if you're just gonna like at your main feed, it probably gets a little messy.
mhm. Yeah, and then I do also. I'm in the early stages. I'm kind of looking at different options. I do want to make a website, so I'll have probably a separate portrait area and then a separate nature area. But
Good idea.
yeah. Right now, I'm trying to decide between like Squarespace and SmugMug. Those are my two finalists. Uh, but they're pretty similar prices. It's just a matter of, I don't know,
You know which one I
different
use.
options. Yeah, you're basically sponsored by them.
I
Yeah.
wish.
I'm kind of leaning towards Squarespace at the moment, just because they have this really cool feature where you can place your products in your Instagram. So say I'm selling a print and I post that photo, you can literally buy it right from there.
Yeah,
I just I think that'd be really cool.
their e-commerce is pretty top notch, but
Yeah.
Smugmug's great as well. I've sold quite a few. Actually, recently, someone I know bought two metal prints for me, pretty big size. I believe 32 by 40. They're pretty big. They're up there, several $100s actually. But yeah, they ordered them and they're made from a print lab, at least from SmugMug. And you can choose a print lab, which is cool, and then they ship directly to that person. So it kind of cuts out the middleman. I guess I really don't have to do much work. I oversee the order, like I get emailed and notified, but like other than that, that's pretty much it. Like I just kind of oversee it. So, but I mean, don't get me wrong, Squarespace is great as well.
Mhm. Well, that's pretty much it for my announcements. I want to thank you guys again for watching.
Yes, thank you.
We'll see you in the next podcast. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching the All Outdoors Photography Podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and the video version on YouTube as well. You can subscribe down below, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you.